In a small, quiet town surrounded by thick woods in Oregon, life moved at a slow pace. The air was always fresh, carrying the scent of pine trees, and the streets were rarely busy. People knew each other by name, and nothing much ever happened to disrupt the calm rhythm of daily life. Michael Carter was one of those people who blended into the background. He wasn't particularly remarkable or ambitious. He worked as a mechanic at a local garage, fixing cars and chatting with customers about mundane things like the weather or sports. His life was simple, predictable, and safe. But all of that changed on a chilly autumn evening when Michael decided to take a shortcut home through the forest. It wasn't something he usually did. He preferred the well-lit roads, but tonight he was tired. After a long day at work, all he wanted was to get home, grab a beer, and relax. The path through the woods was darker than he expected, the tall trees blocking out most of the moonlight. Still, Michael pressed on, listening to the sound of his boots crunching against the dry leaves beneath him. As he walked, a strange feeling began to creep over him. At first, it was just a sense that he wasn't alone. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and he slowed his pace, glancing around. The forest was eerily silent, not even the chirping of crickets breaking the stillness. Then, just as he started to convince himself it was all in his head, he saw her. She was standing a few yards ahead, partially hidden by the shadows of the trees. Her pale skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, and her long, dark hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall. She wore a simple dress that looked oddly out of place in the wilderness, and her piercing blue eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made him freeze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Michael felt rooted to the spot, unable to look away. "Are you lost?" he finally managed to ask, his voice breaking the silence. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him as if trying to figure something out. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but carried an edge that sent a shiver down his spine. "I don't know where I am," she admitted, stepping closer. "I woke up here, and I can't remember how I got here." Michael frowned. Something about her story didn't quite add up, but he couldn't bring himself to be suspicious. There was something mesmerizing about her presence, almost otherworldly. Shaking off his unease, he nodded and forced a smile. "Well, you're not far from town. My name's Michael, by the way. Let me help you find your way back." The woman hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My name is Elena." They began walking together, Michael leading the way while Elena followed closely behind. As they moved, he tried to make conversation, asking questions about where she might have come from, or if she remembered anything unusual before waking up in the woods. But Elena's answers were vague, and she seemed distracted, her gaze constantly darting around as though searching for something or someone. Despite her mysterious demeanor, Michael found himself drawn to her. There was an undeniable charm about Elena, a kind of magnetism that made it hard to resist her. Even Ryan, his best friend, noticed it the next day when Michael mentioned meeting her. "You sure this isn't some weird setup?" Ryan teased during their lunch break at the garage. "A girl just happens to show up in the middle of nowhere, and you swoop in to save the day." Michael rolled his eyes. "It's not like that." She seemed genuinely lost. "Besides, there's something about her. I don't know, man. She's different." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" Michael shrugged. "I can't explain it. You'd have to meet her to understand." Over the next few days, Elena became a regular part of Michael's life. She claimed to have no family or friends nearby, so Michael offered to show her around town. They spent hours exploring the area, talking about everything from books to movies. Elena listened intently, her sharp mind absorbing every detail. Yet there were moments when she would suddenly go quiet, her expression distant, as though she were remembering something painful. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the lake, Michael noticed how the fading sunlight caught in her eyes, making them sparkle like sapphires. He felt a pang of admiration, and maybe something more. Clearing his throat, he turned to her. "Elena, do you ever feel like you don't belong here? Like you're from somewhere else entirely?" For a split second, her mask slipped. A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Fear, perhaps, or sadness, but it vanished just as quickly. "Sometimes," she murmured. "But maybe everyone feels that way sometimes." Michael nodded, accepting her answer without pressing further. He didn't want to push too hard, afraid of ruining whatever fragile connection they had built. Little did he know, Elena's words held more truth than he could possibly imagine. That night, as Michael lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had taken a turn he hadn't anticipated. Elena was unlike anyone he had ever met, and though there were parts of her story that didn't make sense, he couldn't deny the pull she had on him. What he didn't realize yet was that this pull wasn't just emotional. It was something far deeper, far more dangerous. And soon, he would discover exactly how deadly it could be. As the days turned into weeks, Michael and Elena grew closer. Their bond deepened with each passing moment, and it became clear to everyone around them that something special was happening between the two. Even Ryan, who had initially teased Michael about his mysterious new friend, couldn't help but notice how much happier his buddy seemed. Michael laughed more, smiled wider, and even hummed tunes while working on cars at the garage, something he hadn't done in years. But there were moments when Ryan felt uneasy. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something about Elena didn't sit right with him. She was beautiful, charming, and intelligent, no doubt about that. Yet, whenever they were around other people, she seemed distant, almost cold. Her eyes would dart around the room as if she were scanning for threats, and her smiles never quite reached her eyes. Once, during a group outing at a local diner, Ryan caught her staring at another customer, a man sitting alone in the corner, with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. When the man accidentally bumped into her while leaving, Elena flinched so violently that her glass of water spilled across the table. "Hey, you okay?" Michael asked, concern etched on his face as he handed her a napkin. Elena forced a smile and nodded. "I'm fine. Just startled." Ryan exchanged a glance with Michael, but said nothing. Later, when they were alone, Ryan pulled Michael aside. "Look, I know you really like her, but have you noticed how weird she gets sometimes? Like she doesn't act normal around others." Michael sighed, shaking his head. "She's been through a lot, Ryan. You heard her. She doesn't remember anything about her past. Cut her some slack." Ryan held up his hands in surrender. All right. I'm just looking out for you, man. If something feels off, don't ignore it." Michael brushed off his friend's concerns, unwilling to entertain any doubts about Elena. To him, she was perfect. Every time they were together, it felt like the world faded away, leaving only the two of them. They shared long conversations about everything under the sun, from their favorite books to their dreams for the future. Sometimes, they would simply sit in silence, enjoying each other's company without needing to fill the void with words. One evening, as they walked along the edge of the forest where they had first met, Michael found himself daring to dream bigger than ever before. The thought of spending the rest of his life with Elena didn't seem far-fetched anymore. It felt inevitable. As they paused beneath a canopy of stars, he turned to her, his heart pounding. "Elena," he began, his voice soft but steady. "You've changed my life since you came into it. I don't think I've ever felt this way about anyone before." Elena looked at him, her expression unreadable. For a brief second, Michael thought he saw fear flicker in her eyes, but then she smiled. A genuine, warm smile that lit up her entire face. "You've changed mine too, Michael. More than you know." Encouraged by her response, Michael reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool to the touch, sending a shiver up his arm, but he didn't let go. Instead, he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a gentle kiss. At first, nothing happened. The kiss was tender, sweet, and filled with promise. But then, without warning, a jolt of electricity shot through Michael's body. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was overwhelming. A surge of energy that left him dizzy and disoriented. His vision blurred, and for a fleeting moment, he saw flashes of strange images. Towering structures made of crystal, vast deserts bathed in red light, and beings with glowing eyes that watched him silently. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sensation stopped. Michael staggered back, gasping for air. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the ground, clutching his chest. Elena stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. Slowly, she knelt beside him, her hands hovering uncertainly over his trembling form. What was that?" Michael stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it some kind of seizure, or had he imagined those bizarre visions? Elena's face was pale, her lips pressed tightly together. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and urgent. "You shouldn't have done that." "Done what?" Michael asked, still struggling to catch his breath. "Kissed you." She nodded, her gaze dropping to the ground. "Yes. No human has ever survived that." The words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. "Survived what?" he demanded, his confusion giving way to anger. "What are you talking about, Elena?" For a moment, she said nothing. Her shoulders slumped as though carrying a great weight. Then, with a deep sigh, she looked up at him. "I'm not who you think I am, Michael. I'm not human." Her confession hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Michael stared at her, his mind reeling. He wanted to laugh it off, to tell her she was joking, but the look in her eyes told him otherwise. She was deadly serious. Before he could respond, Elena continued, her voice trembling. "My kind. We're hunters. We feed on the life force of others. A single kiss is usually enough to drain a human completely. That's why I've avoided touching you until now. But when you kissed me," she trailed off, shaking her head, "you shouldn't be alive." Michael's thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind. Part of him wanted to run, to get as far away from Elena as possible. But another part, the part that had grown to care for her deeply, refused to believe she meant him harm. "If you're dangerous," he said slowly, "then why didn't you kill me already? Why tell me any of this?" Elena hesitated, her eyes searching his face. "Because I don't want to hurt you, Michael. I don't understand why you survived, but I can't deny that you're different. And maybe that means something." The sincerity in her voice melted some of Michael's fear. He didn't fully grasp what was happening, but one thing was clear. Whatever secrets Elena carried, she wasn't lying about them. Taking a shaky breath, he reached out and gently touched her hand. This time, there was no electric shock, no visions, just the warmth of human connection. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly, though inside, he wasn't sure he believed his own words. "Together." Elena nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time since meeting her, Michael realized that she was just as scared as he was, if not more. Whatever danger lay ahead, they would face it side by side. But little did either of them know, their problems were only beginning. Somewhere far beyond the stars, forces were stirring. Forces that wouldn't take kindly to the survival of a human who defied the rules of nature. The days that followed Elena's confession were a blur for Michael. His mind was constantly racing, trying to process everything she had told him. She wasn't human. She was a hunter, a creature capable of draining the life force of others with a single kiss. And yet, despite all of that, Michael couldn't bring himself to walk away from her. There was something about Elena that made it impossible for him to turn his back on her, even when logic screamed at him to do so. Elena, too, seemed torn. She spent most of her time with Michael, but there was a tension in her movements, a nervous energy that hadn't been there before. She avoided crowded places and kept glancing over her shoulder as though expecting someone, or something, to appear out of nowhere. Michael noticed these changes, but he didn't press her for answers. Instead, he focused on keeping things as normal as possible, hoping that routine might ease some of the fear hanging over them. One evening, as they sat together on Michael's couch watching an old movie, Elena finally broke the silence. "They'll come for me," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the screen but not really seeing it. "When they find out what happened, they won't stop until they know why you're still alive." Michael paused the movie and turned to look at her. "Who are they?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "My people," Elena replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "The ones I left behind. They sent me here to hunt, to gather energy. But now," she trailed off, shaking her head, "now I've broken the rules. I let you live." Michael frowned, leaning forward. "Why does it matter so much? Why can't they just leave us alone?" Elena hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Because humans aren't supposed to survive. It's never happened before. If word gets out that someone like you exists, if they realize you're different, it could change everything. For them, for me, for everyone." The weight of her words settled heavily between them. Michael knew she was right. Whatever connection they shared was unnatural, unpredictable. And if her kind discovered it, they wouldn't hesitate to act. Still, he refused to give in to despair. "Then we'll fight," he said firmly. "Whatever comes our way, we'll handle it together." Elena looked at him, her expression a mix of admiration and sorrow. "You don't understand how powerful they are. You don't know what they're capable of." "Maybe not," Michael admitted, "but I'm not giving up without a try. Not after everything we've been through." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the television. Then, almost instinctively, Michael reached out and took her hand. This time, there was no shock, no surge of energy, just the warmth of her skin against his. Elena squeezed his hand gently, her lips curving into a small, grateful smile. The first sign of trouble came 2 nights later. Michael was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when he heard a noise outside. At first, he thought it was just the wind rattling the trees, but then the sound came again, a low, guttural growl that sent chills down his spine. He sat up quickly, his heart pounding, and glanced toward the window. Elena appeared in the doorway, her face pale and drawn. "They're here," she whispered. Without another word, she grabbed Michael's arm and pulled him out of bed. Together, they hurried downstairs and slipped out the back door, moving as quietly as possible. The night air was cold, and the forest loomed ahead like a dark, endless maze. Michael wanted to ask questions. Who were they? How many? What did they want? But he bit his tongue, knowing there was no time for explanations. As they moved deeper into the woods, the sense of being watched grew stronger. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, felt like a threat closing in around them. Finally, Elena stopped near an old abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. "We'll stay here for now," she said, pushing open the creaky wooden door. "It's not safe anywhere else." Inside, the cabin was musty and damp, but it offered shelter. Michael collapsed onto a dusty chair while Elena paced nervously, her eyes darting toward the windows every few seconds. After several tense minutes, she finally spoke. "2 of them came. Hunters. They'll be searching the area soon." "How do they know where to look?" Michael asked, rubbing his temples. His head was throbbing, and his thoughts were scrambled. "They can track me," Elena explained, "through my energy signature. As long as I'm close, they'll find us." Michael groaned, running a hand through his hair. "So what do we do? Keep running forever?" "I don't know," Elena admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I've never defied them before. I don't even know if it's possible to escape." Her vulnerability hit Michael hard. Up until now, Elena had always seemed so strong, so in control. Seeing her like this, frightened and uncertain, made him realize just how much danger they were truly in. But instead of letting fear consume him, he stood up and walked over to her. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he looked her in the eye. "We'll figure it out," he said firmly. "We have to." Elena nodded, though her expression remained troubled. Outside, the wind howled and shadows danced across the walls. Neither of them slept that night, their ears straining for any sign of movement beyond the cabin's thin walls. By morning, the hunters had found them. Michael woke to the sound of footsteps crunching on dry leaves outside. He bolted upright, his heart hammering in his chest. Elena was already standing by the window, peering cautiously through the cracked glass. "They're here," she murmured, her voice tight with fear. Moments later, the door burst open, splintering under the force of the intruders. Two figures stepped inside, their forms tall and angular, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Their skin shimmered faintly, as though made of liquid metal, and their movements were eerily smooth, almost too perfect to be real. One of them, the taller of the two, spoke first, his voice deep and resonant. "Elena, you've disappointed us." Elena stepped forward, placing herself between the hunters and Michael. "Leave him alone," she said, her tone steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He has nothing to do with this." A second hunter tilted its head, studying Michael with an unsettling intensity. "This human is unique. We need to examine him." "No," Elena shouted, stepping closer. "You won't touch him." The taller hunter sighed, as though dealing with a disobedient child. "You've betrayed your mission, Elena. Do you really think protecting this creature will save you?" Before anyone could react, the hunters lunged forward. Time seemed to slow as Michael watched Elena move with incredible speed, positioning herself directly in their path. A flash of light erupted, blinding him momentarily, and when his vision cleared, the hunters were gone. And so was Elena. Michael stumbled outside, calling her name, but the forest was silent. All that remained was the faint scent of ozone lingering in the air. Whatever had just happened, one thing was certain. Elena had sacrificed herself to buy him time. And now Michael was more determined than ever to find her, and to uncover the truth about the deadly bond they shared. Michael stood in the middle of the forest, his chest heaving as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. The hunters were gone, and so was Elena. One moment they had been surrounded by those strange, glowing-eyed creatures, and the next everything had dissolved into chaos. A flash of light, a blur of motion, and then silence. He called out her name again, his voice cracking with desperation, but the only response was the rustling of leaves in the wind. His mind raced. What had she done? Had she fought them off, or had she been taken? Either way, Michael knew one thing for certain. He couldn't just stand there and wait. Elena had risked herself to protect him, and now it was his turn to do something. Anything to help her. He forced himself to think clearly, to push aside the panic threatening to overwhelm him. If he wanted to find Elena, he needed answers. And the only person who could provide those answers was Elena herself, or at least whatever clues she might have left behind. With that thought in mind, Michael retraced their steps back to the cabin. It was a long shot, but maybe she had left something behind. Some kind of hint about where she had gone, or what she planned to do. When he reached the cabin, the scene inside was chaotic. The door hung crookedly on its hinges, and scorch marks marred the wooden floor where the hunter's energy blasts had struck. Michael moved cautiously, scanning the room for anything unusual. At first, he saw nothing, just broken furniture and scattered debris. But then, tucked beneath a pile of splintered wood, he spotted something shiny. Bending down, he picked it up and realized it was a small pendant, shaped like a crescent moon. Elena had been wearing it around her neck earlier. As he held the pendant in his hand, a strange warmth spread through his fingers, and for a brief moment, he felt connected. Images flickered in his mind. Elena standing alone in a vast, alien landscape, her face filled with determination. Then the vision faded, leaving him disoriented but certain of one thing. Wherever she was still alive. Over the next few days, Michael searched tirelessly for any trace of Elena. He visited every place they had ever gone together. The lake, the diner, the quiet trails in the woods, hoping to pick up even the smallest clue. Each time, he came up empty-handed, but he refused to give up. He couldn't. During this time, Ryan became increasingly concerned. At first, he had noticed Michael's distracted behavior and chalked it up to stress. But when Michael started asking strange questions about energy signatures, tracking devices, and otherworldly beings, Ryan knew something was seriously wrong. "All right, spill it," Ryan said one evening as they sat in Michael's garage. "What's going on with you? You've been acting weird ever since that girl showed up." Michael hesitated. He hadn't told anyone about Alina's true nature, not even his best friend. But now, faced with Ryan's probing questions, he realized he couldn't keep it all bottled up anymore. Taking a deep breath, he began explaining everything. How Alina wasn't human, how she had saved him from the hunters, and how she had disappeared without a trace. To Michael's surprise, Ryan didn't laugh or call him crazy. Instead, he listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. When Michael finished, Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Wow, that's a lot to take in." "I know it sounds insane," Michael admitted, "but I swear it's all true. She's out there somewhere, and I need to find her." Ryan nodded slowly. "Okay, let's say I believe you. How are you supposed to track down someone who's not even human?" Michael pulled out the crescent-shaped pendant and showed it to Ryan. "This was hers. When I touch it, I feel something. Like a connection. Maybe it can lead me to her." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You're saying this necklace is magical or something?" "I don't know what it is," Michael replied. "All I know is that it's my best chance of finding her." After a long pause, Ryan sighed. "All right, fine. If you're serious about this, I'm coming with you. 2 heads are better than 1, right?" Michael smiled faintly. "Thanks, man. I appreciate it." With Ryan's help, Michael devised a plan. They decided to start by revisiting the spot where the hunters had attacked, hoping to find some kind of trail. Armed with flashlights and determination, they ventured into the forest late at night, the pendant glowing faintly in Michael's hand. As they approached the area, Michael felt a tingling sensation in his fingertips, stronger than before. He stopped abruptly, holding up a hand to signal Ryan. "She was here," he whispered. "I can feel it." Ryan glanced around nervously, gripping the flashlight tighter. "Do you hear that?" he asked suddenly. Michael froze, listening intently. At first, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. Then, faintly, he heard it, a low hum, almost musical, emanating from somewhere nearby. Following the sound, they pushed deeper into the woods until they stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an eerie blue light. In the center of the clearing stood a swirling portal, shimmering like liquid glass. Around it, the air crackled with energy, and Michael could feel his skin prickle. He didn't need to ask what it was obvious. This was how the hunters traveled. And if Alina had been taken, this was likely where they had gone. "Are you sure about this?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you step through that thing, there's no telling where you'll end up." Michael clenched his fists, staring at the portal. "I don't care. I'm not leaving her behind." Ryan sighed, shaking his head. "All right, but promise me one thing. If things go sideways, you come back." "Got it." Michael nodded. "Got it." Taking a deep breath, he stepped toward the portal, the pendant clutched tightly in his hand. As he crossed the threshold, a wave of dizziness washed over him, and the world dissolved into light and color. For a moment, he felt weightless, untethered from reality. Then, with a jolt, he landed hard on solid ground. Looking around, Michael realized he was no longer in the forest. Towering crystalline structures rose into the sky, casting rainbow-colored reflections across the landscape. Strange, insect-like creatures scurried past, paying him no attention. And in the distance, he saw her, Alina, standing alone amidst the alien cityscape, her expression unreadable. "Elena," he shouted, running toward her. She turned, her eyes widening in shock. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "I came for you," he said simply, stopping just a few feet away. "I wasn't going to let you face this alone." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elena smiled, a real, genuine smile, and took a step closer. "You're either very brave or very foolish," she said softly. "But I'm glad you're here." Before either of them could say more, a low rumble echoed through the air. Turning, they saw the hunters approaching, their glowing eyes fixed on Michael. Elena stepped in front of him, her stance defensive. "We don't have much time," she said urgently. "If we're going to survive this, we'll have to fight." Michael nodded, his resolve hardening. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. Together, they would face it. And somehow, they would find a way to win. The alien city stretched endlessly around them, its towering crystal structures shimmering under a sky painted in hues of purple and orange. Michael had never imagined such a place could exist, but there was no time to marvel at the strange beauty surrounding him. The hunters were closing in, their glowing eyes locked onto Elena and Michael with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Elena stepped forward, positioning herself between Michael and the approaching figures. Her body was tense, her hands clenched into fists. "Stay behind me," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the fear flickering in her eyes. "They're faster and stronger than you think." Michael nodded, gripping the crescent pendant tightly in his hand. He wasn't sure how much help he could be against creatures like these, but he refused to let Elena face them alone. "What's the plan?" he asked quietly. "There is no plan," Elena admitted. "We fight until we can't anymore." Before Michael could respond, the hunters lunged forward, moving with unnatural speed. One of them swung a claw-like appendage toward Elena, who ducked just in time, the sharp edge slicing through the air where her head had been moments before. She retaliated with a swift kick, sending the creature stumbling backward. But the second hunter was already circling around, trying to flank them. "Watch out," Michael shouted as the second hunter charged toward him. Instinctively, he raised the pendant, which began to glow brighter, emitting a soft hum. To his surprise, the hunter hesitated, its movements slowing as though repelled by the light. Seizing the opportunity, Michael swung the pendant like a weapon, forcing the creature to retreat further. Elena glanced back at him, her expression a mix of shock and admiration. "How are you doing that?" "I don't know," Michael replied, dodging another attack. "It just works." The hunters roared in frustration, their glowing eyes narrowing as they regrouped. They seemed confused by Michael's ability to resist them, and for the first time, Michael realized that this might be their advantage. Whatever connection he shared with Elena, and now, apparently with the pendant, was something they didn't understand. And if they could use that confusion to their benefit, they might stand a chance. "We need to keep moving," Elena said, grabbing Michael's arm. "They'll call for reinforcements soon." Without waiting for a response, she pulled him toward one of the crystalline towers nearby. Its surface was smooth and reflective, making it difficult to climb. But Elena pressed her hands against it, and to Michael's astonishment, the material softened beneath her touch, forming handholds. "Climb," she urged, gesturing for him to follow. Michael hesitated for only a second before starting his ascent. The hunters below snarled and leaped upward, attempting to grab them, but Elena used her energy to create barriers, temporarily holding them at bay. By the time they reached the top of the tower, the hunters were far below, glaring up at them with murderous intent. Panting heavily, Michael collapsed onto the platform, his legs trembling from the effort. "That won't hold them forever," he said, glancing down nervously. "What do we do now?" Elena scanned the horizon, her brow furrowed in thought. "There's a way out of here, a portal similar to the one you came through. If we can reach it, we can escape." "And go where?" Michael asked. "Back to Earth. Won't they just follow us?" "They might," Elena admitted. But we'll have the advantage there. This world isn't ours. It's theirs. On Earth, we can fight on our terms. Michael nodded reluctantly. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than staying here and waiting to be captured, or worse. All right, he said. Let's do it. Navigating the alien city proved more challenging than either of them had anticipated. The hunters were relentless, tracking their every move with terrifying precision. Every corner they turned, every structure they hid behind, seemed to bring them closer to danger. At one point, they narrowly avoided being ambushed when a group of smaller, insect-like creatures swarmed around them, their clicking mandibles snapping hungrily. Alina managed to drive them off with bursts of energy, but the encounter left both of them shaken. As they continued their desperate journey, Michael noticed something strange happening to himself. His body felt different, stronger, faster. The ache in his muscles from climbing and running seemed to fade quickly, replaced by a surge of energy that coursed through his veins. When he mentioned it to Alina, her eyes widened in realization. "It's because of me," she said softly. "When I kissed you, my energy merged with yours. You've been absorbing it all along." Michael frowned, unsure whether to feel alarmed or grateful. "Does that mean I'm becoming like you?" "No," Alina replied quickly. "You're still human. But the energy has changed you, made you stronger, faster, more resilient." A small part of Michael wanted to ask what the long-term effects might be, but he pushed the thought aside. Right now, survival was the only thing that mattered. Finally, after what felt like hours of running and hiding, they reached the outskirts of the city. In the distance, they could see the faint outline of another portal, glowing faintly against the darkening sky. Relief washed over Michael, but it was short-lived. Behind them, the hunters appeared once again, their glowing eyes burning with fury. "You take the lead," Alina said, pushing Michael ahead of her. "I'll hold them off." "What?" "No," Michael protested. "I'm not leaving you behind." "You have to," Alina insisted, her voice firm. "If you don't make it through the portal, none of this matters. Go." Reluctantly, Michael obeyed, sprinting toward the portal as fast as he could. Behind him, he heard the sounds of battle. Alina's shouts, the hunters' roars, the crackle of energy blasts. But he forced himself not to look back. Reaching the portal, he turned just in time to see Alina collapse to her knees, blood trickling from a wound on her side. One of the hunters loomed over her, raising a clawed hand to strike. "No," Michael screamed, charging back toward her without thinking. As he ran, the pendant in his hand flared brightly, releasing a wave of energy that knocked the hunter off balance. Seizing the moment, Alina scrambled to her feet and joined Michael, limping but determined. "Go," she urged again, shoving him toward the portal. Together, they stepped through, the world dissolving into light and sound once more. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves back in the forest near Michael's town. The air smelled sweet and familiar, and the stars twinkled peacefully above them. For a brief moment, Michael allowed himself to breathe deeply, savoring the feeling of being home. But the relief was fleeting. Alina sank to the ground, clutching her injured side, her face pale and drawn. "We're not safe yet," she whispered. "They'll find us again." Michael knelt beside her, his heart pounding. "Then we'll be ready," he said firmly. "Next time, we won't run. We'll fight." Alina looked at him, her lips curving into a faint smile. Together. And though neither of them knew what the future held, they both understood one thing. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The forest was quiet, the only sounds coming from the rustling leaves and distant chirping of crickets. Michael knelt beside Alina, his hands trembling as he tried to assess her wound. The gash on her side wasn't deep, but it was enough to make her weak, and the sight of her blood sent a surge of anger through him. He tore off his jacket and pressed it against the injury, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. "Hold still," he said softly, his voice shaking. "We'll get you fixed up." Alina winced but nodded, her breathing labored. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't have made it this far without you." Michael forced a smile, though his mind was racing. They were safe for now, but they both knew the hunters wouldn't give up so easily. Their kind didn't strike him as the type to accept failure, not when their mission involved something as unusual as him. Whatever secrets he carried, whatever power had allowed him to survive Elena's kiss, it was clear that her people wanted answers. And they wouldn't stop until they got them. "We need to move," Elena said after a moment, trying to sit up. "They'll track us here." Michael gently pushed her back down. "Not yet. You're hurt, and we don't know how close they are. We need to rest, even if it's just for a little while." Elena hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. She was too weak to argue, and Michael could see the toll the fight had taken on her. Her pale skin looked almost translucent in the moonlight, and her eyes, usually so sharp and focused, were clouded with exhaustion. Still, there was a flicker of determination in them, a refusal to give in, no matter how dire the situation. As Elena rested, Michael kept watch, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The pendant hung loosely around his neck now, its faint glow serving as both a comfort and a warning. He didn't fully understand how it worked or why it responded to the hunters, but he knew one thing. It was tied to Elena, and maybe to him. Every time he touched it, he felt a strange warmth spreading through his body, as though it were amplifying the energy he'd absorbed from her. It was unsettling, but also empowering. For the first time, he felt like he might actually stand a chance against their enemies. Hours passed, and Elena slowly regained some of her strength. By the time dawn broke, she was able to stand, albeit unsteadily. Michael helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they began the long trek back toward town. They moved cautiously, sticking to the densest parts of the forest to avoid detection. Neither of them spoke much. Their focus was on survival, not conversation. When they finally reached Michael's garage, Ryan was waiting for them, pacing nervously outside. His face lit up with relief when he saw them, but his expression quickly shifted to concern as he noticed Elena's condition. "What happened?" he asked, rushing over to help Michael support her. "The hunters found us," Michael explained briefly. "We barely escaped." Ryan frowned, glancing at Elena. "Are you okay?" "I will be," she replied, forcing a weak smile. "But we don't have much time. They'll come for us again." Ryan nodded grimly. "All right, let's get inside and figure out what to do next." Inside the garage, they set up a makeshift bed for Elena using an old mattress and blankets. Michael tended to her wound, cleaning it carefully and wrapping it with bandages scavenged from a first aid kit. As he worked, Ryan paced the room, running a hand through his hair. "So, what's the plan?" Ryan asked, stopping abruptly. "You can't exactly call the cops about this, and hiding isn't going to work forever." Michael sighed, sitting back on his heels. "We fight." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Fight? Against those things? Have you seen what they can do?" "Yes, I have." Michael shot back, his tone sharper than intended. "And I know it sounds crazy, but we don't have a choice. If we run, they'll just keep chasing us. At least if we fight, we have a shot." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Ryan pressed. "You've got a glowing necklace and some weird superhuman abilities. That's great, but it's not enough to take on an entire army of alien hunters." Michael clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing: giving up wasn't an option. "Then we find a way to level the playing field," he said firmly. "There has to be something, some weakness they have that we can exploit." Elena, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "They're vulnerable to energy disruptions," she said softly. "Their bodies are designed to absorb and manipulate energy, but if you overload them, it can destabilize their systems." Michael turned to her, his eyes lighting up. "Like the pendant did back in the city." She nodded. "Exactly. The pendant disrupted their energy fields. If we can amplify that effect, The night was eerily calm, the kind of quiet that made Michael's skin prickle. He stood outside the garage, staring into the darkness beyond the trees. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation, as though the world itself knew something big was coming. Ryan had rigged up motion sensors around the perimeter, hoping to buy them some warning if the hunters arrived. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that they were already being watched. Inside, Alina rested on the makeshift bed, her breathing shallow but steady. Her wound was healing, but slowly, too slowly for comfort. Every time Michael looked at her, he felt a mix of guilt and determination. She had sacrificed so much for him, fought so hard to protect him. Now it was his turn to step up. If the hunters wanted a fight, they'd get one. Ryan emerged from the garage, holding one of the energy devices they had built. "These things are ready," he said, his voice low. "But I still don't know how effective they'll be." "They'll work," Michael replied firmly. "We've got no other choice." Ryan sighed, shaking his head. "You're really serious about this, aren't you? You actually think we can take down those things?" "I know we can," Michael said without hesitation. "We have to." Ryan studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let's do this." It wasn't long before their preparations were put to the test. Just after midnight, the motion sensors went off, flashing red lights in quick succession. Michael grabbed the nearest energy device, his heart pounding. Ryan followed suit, gripping another gadget tightly. They exchanged a glance, neither needing to say a word. The first hunter appeared moments later, stepping out of the shadows like a ghost. Its glowing eyes locked onto Michael, and it let out a low growl, its claws flexing menacingly. Behind it, two more figures emerged, their forms shimmering faintly in the moonlight. They moved with unnatural speed, surrounding the garage in seconds. Michael stepped forward, raising the energy device. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice trembling slightly but firm enough to carry authority. The lead hunter tilted its head, studying him curiously. Then, without warning, it lunged. Michael triggered the device, sending a burst of energy toward the creature. The blast struck it squarely in the chest, causing it to stagger backward, its glowing eyes flickering erratically. For a moment, it seemed disoriented, but then it recovered, snarling angrily. "Damn it," Michael muttered, backing away as the other hunters closed in. Ryan fired his own device, hitting one of them, and creating a brief opening. Together, they retreated into the garage, slamming the door shut behind them. "They're too strong," Ryan exclaimed, panic creeping into his voice. "What do we do now?" Michael glanced at Alina, who was struggling to sit up despite her injuries. "We'd hold them off," he said grimly. "Alina, can you help?" She nodded weakly, reaching for a smaller version of the energy device. Though she could barely stand, her determination was unwavering. "I'll do what I can." The hunters didn't waste time. Within seconds, they began tearing at the garage doors, their claws ripping through the metal with terrifying ease. Michael braced himself, clutching the device tightly. When the doors finally gave way, the creatures poured inside, their glowing eyes scanning the room hungrily. This time, Michael didn't hesitate. As soon as the lead hunter stepped forward, he unleashed another energy blast, aiming for its head. The impact sent the creature reeling, its body convulsing violently before collapsing to the ground. Encouraged by the success, Ryan targeted another hunter, firing repeatedly until it stumbled and fell. But the third hunter proved more resilient. It dodged the blasts with ease, moving faster than Michael thought possible. Before he could react, it swiped at him, knocking the device from his hand. Pain shot through his arm as he hit the floor, the breath knocked out of him. The hunter loomed over him, its claws raised to strike. "Michael!" Alina screamed, throwing herself between him and the creature. With a flick of her wrist, she activated her own device, releasing a concentrated burst of energy directly into the hunter's chest. The force of the blast sent it flying backward, its body dissolving into a cloud of ash. For a moment, there was silence. The remaining hunters lay motionless on the ground, their forms crumbling into nothingness. Michael stared at Alina, his chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. "You saved me again," he said hoarsely. She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "No, we saved each other." As the adrenaline began to fade, exhaustion set in. Ryan slumped against the wall, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Well, that was insane," he muttered, letting out a shaky laugh. "Do you think that's all of them?" Alina frowned, her expression grim. "I don't know. There may be more." Michael stood up, wincing as pain shot through his injured arm. "Then we stay ready. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it." Alina walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You've changed, Michael. You're stronger than I ever imagined." He smiled faintly, meeting her gaze. "So have you. And we're not done yet." Ryan interrupted, gesturing toward the mess of destroyed equipment and scorched walls. Guys, hate to break up the moment, but we might want to clean this place up before someone notices." Michael chuckled, the tension easing slightly, one problem at a time. As dawn broke, the three of them worked together to tidy up the garage, erasing any evidence of the battle. It was slow going, but they managed to make the space look relatively normal again. By the time they finished, the sun was high in the sky, casting golden light across the town. Despite the chaos of the night, Michael felt a strange sense of peace. They had faced impossible odds, and won. More importantly, they had done it together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them as a team. As he stood outside the garage, watching the sunrise, Alina joined him, leaning lightly against his side. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Michael took a deep breath, smiling as he looked at her. "Now, we keep fighting. We find answers, and we protect each other, no matter what." Alina nodded, her lips curving into a small, hopeful smile. Together. And as they stood there, bathed in the warm morning light, they both knew that their journey was far from over. But for the first time, they weren't afraid of what came next. The days that followed the battle were tense, but there was a quiet sense of victory in the air. Michael, Alina, and Ryan had survived an attack from the hunters, something none of them had expected to do. Still, they knew better than to let their guard down. The hunters' people, Alina's people, were out there somewhere, regrouping, planning their next move. The trio couldn't afford to relax. They spent their time preparing for what might come next. Michael worked tirelessly in the garage, refining the energy devices they had built. With Alina's guidance, he learned how to make them more efficient, channeling not just his own strength, but also the strange energy flowing through him since her kiss. Each day, he felt stronger, faster, more capable. It was unsettling at times, but he embraced it, knowing it gave him an edge against their enemies. Alina, meanwhile, focused on healing. Her wound was closing, though scars remained, a reminder of the sacrifices she had made. She spent hours talking with Michael, sharing stories about her world, her kind, and the rules they lived by. Some of it was hard for him to understand, but one thing became clear. Her decision to protect him had marked her as a traitor in their eyes. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for redemption, for a chance to prove that her choice to stand with Michael had been worth it. Ryan, ever the pragmatist, kept watch over the town. He monitored the motion sensors around the garage, checked local news for signs of unusual activity, and even convinced a few friends to keep an eye out for anything strange. "If those things show up again," he told Michael one evening, "we'll know before they get too close." Despite the constant threat hanging over them, life began to feel almost normal, or as normal as it could be under the circumstances. Michael found himself laughing more, enjoying the simple moments with Alina and Ryan. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could win this fight. But peace never lasts long when danger is lurking. It happened on a cold, gray afternoon. The sky was overcast, and the wind carried a biting chill. Michael was testing a new version of the energy device when Ryan burst into the garage, his face pale. "We've got company," he said breathlessly. "3 of them. Maybe more. They're coming fast." Michael's stomach dropped, but he didn't hesitate. Grabbing the device, he turned to Alina. "Are you ready?" She nodded, determination etched on her face. "Let's finish this." Together, they moved outside, positioning themselves near the edge of the woods. The hunters appeared moments later, stepping out of the shadows like wraiths. Their glowing eyes scanned the area, locking onto Michael and Alina almost immediately. But this time, they weren't alone. Behind them stood another figure, one who looked eerily similar to Alina. "Cowrin," Alina whispered, her voice filled with dread. The newcomer stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Alina," he said, his tone cold and commanding. "You have defied your purpose. You have betrayed us." "I chose my path," Alina shot back, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "And I won't apologize for it." Cowrin's gaze shifted to Michael, studying him with unsettling intensity. "You have grown strong," he observed. "Stronger than any human should be. But your power will not save you." Michael tightened his grip on the energy device. "We'll see about that." Without warning, Cowrin raised a hand, sending a wave of energy toward them. Michael reacted instinctively, activating the device and countering the attack. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves rippling through the air, knocking everyone off balance. The other hunters lunged forward, forcing Michael and Alina to split up to defend themselves. The battle was fierce, each side fighting with everything they had. Michael used the pendant's energy to amplify his attacks, targeting the hunters one by one. Alina fought alongside him, her movements graceful yet deadly as she unleashed bursts of energy from her own device. Ryan stayed back, providing cover fire whenever he could, his aim surprisingly accurate. But Cowrin was different. He was faster, stronger, smarter. Every time Michael thought he had the upper hand, Cowrin countered effortlessly, pushing him closer to defeat. Just as Michael began to falter, Alina appeared at his side, her expression resolute. "Together," she said simply. They combined their powers, channeling their energy into a single concentrated blast. The force of it hit Cowrin squarely, causing him to stagger. For the first time, his composure cracked, his glowing eyes widening in surprise. "Impossible," he murmured. "It's over," Alina declared, stepping forward. "Leave us alone, or you'll regret it." Cowrin hesitated, glancing at the remaining hunters. After a long moment, he nodded curtly. "This isn't finished," he warned, his voice low. Then, with a flash of light, he and the others vanished, leaving behind only silence. When it was over, exhaustion washed over them all. Michael sank to the ground, his body trembling from the effort of the fight. Alina knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "We both did." Ryan approached, shaking his head in disbelief. "That was insane. Like, movie-level insane." Michael chuckled weakly. "Feels pretty real to me." For a while, none of them spoke. They simply sat there, letting the reality of what had just happened sink in. The hunters were gone. For now. But they all knew this wasn't the end. Cowrin's parting words echoed in their minds, a reminder that the war was far from over. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of orange and purple, Michael looked at Alina. "What happens next?" he asked quietly. "We keep going," she replied, her voice firm. "We find answers, learn more about why you're different, and we prepare for whatever comes our way." Michael nodded, feeling a spark of determination reignite within him. "Then we'll do it together." Alina smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude and hope. Together. And as they sat there, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, they both knew that their journey was just beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. Two unlikely allies bound by fate, courage, and an unbreakable connection.